Popper Etude number 30 gives us a good workout in our left hand, I think partly because it's in 6 flats, so there's not many open strings. Our left hand has to stay in the cello all the time for all of these arpeggios that it gives us a workout in. I think the bow stroke for this should be gently bounced. That kind of bounce that we get in a little bit lower part of the bow, and kind of not a very vertical bounce, but a bounce with a lot of horizontal stroke motion, so we get this attractive ringing sound. My hair hardly leaves the string at all. Maybe the hair stays touching the string, and the stick does a lot of bouncing. I think my hair leaves the string just a little. Now, how to mix the slurs and separates. Sometimes we skip off of short slurs like this to start the articulation. A case that comes to mind out of Popper Etudes is Etude number 36, where we skip off the ends of slurs to start the following staccato, spiccato. And sometimes in that etude, not sometimes, basically as a rule, we skip off of slurs just for the lightness of articulation to fit the character. In this etude number 30, though, we're not going to do that too much. If I skip off more than that, that kind of encourages too spiky of a bounce. We want a gentle bounce in this etude. So in my mind, I'm thinking that the end of the slur connects smoothly into the up bow. And that first up bow starts the bouncing. This etude also gives us a chance to exercise our 4th finger in thumb position. And a rule through this etude that you'll connect the slur to the following note. I'm getting a lot of squeaks on that 4th finger. It's in measure 14. I think a good way to not get as much squeak, I obviously didn't succeed, but a good way to get not much squeak is make sure that your 4th finger goes quickly to the fingerboard. If you touch the string lightly on your way to the fingerboard, your cello string, your A string, thinks you're trying to play a false harmonic. That's what the squeak is the false harmonic. So make sure your finger goes quickly to its solid status. was a little better execution on my part. Hey, notice D flat harmonic in measure 15. We don't very often think of that harmonic being D flat. Usually it's a C sharp, like in a key of A major. D flat. Now sometimes that harmonic will sound a little flat. It depends on how your intonation was before that. If your intonation gets a little happy and goes up, then that harmonic can sound flat. Sorry. Why don't I start here? See, in that case, sounds a little flat. Well, there's two ways to go at this. Don't play sharp. But even if you're in tune, that harmonic can sound a little on the flat side. So in fact, it can be a false harmonic. If your thumb is in tune, keep your thumb solid. And if you play harmonic with third finger, it's a false harmonic at the octave. Just like when you play an open string and touch the octave harmonic. That's what you're doing if you use a false harmonic here. That sounds pretty good that way, and that way you're sure your harmonic is in tune with your thumb note. You don't get that kind of iffy intonation in the octave. Then this etude just entirely copies itself. From measure 17, it's exactly like measure 1. There I got it. And then this middle section of the etude, Popper tells us forte, energico, loud and with energy. And you know, to represent this little difference in character, I stay more on the string and stroke out my sound a little more, just for the loud energy. And notice how there's accents on the slurs. There's not one in measure 34. I think that's just an oversight. There should be an accent on every slur, and it's not the kind of accent that we're going to hit hard, kind of think of it as leaning on it. So we want to, our Popper etudes are certainly technique builders for our left hand, some for our right hand also. But we're at our best if we're not only succeeding in conquering the cello playing challenges of these etudes, but if we find ways to make them character pieces. And so that's one of my ways for this etude. At the energico in measure 33, I try to make a different sound. There's this big backwards shift in measure 41, and a little bit of slide can sound perfectly good, but we don't want too much. If there's too much slide, it just sounds a little slurpy. So try to get the best of both worlds. Don't break your slur, but do have your bow cooperate with the shift, coordinate with the shift a little. So your bow will do just a hint of portato action as you're shifting backwards. And that way you can manage how much sliding sound you get on the way back. A lot of Popper etudes are very chromatic, the same kind of harmonies that you hear in music by Richard Wagner, for example. But this etude has a lot of just straightforward diatonic harmonies. Very plain harmonies that maybe Beethoven would have written. But now, jumping down the page to where I stopped before, we're getting into a little more chromatic and less, and more like Wagner kind of territory. Where did I stop? And it can be helpful to really do a harmonic analysis of the piece, but you know what, it's not super necessary. But nevertheless, we have to hear the harmonic background. If we're not hearing the harmonic background, then we're just learning isolated notes, and oh my gosh, it's hard to make sense out of it then. So in this case, at measure 43, that second note is always like a neighbor note or some kind of note that's not part of the harmony. And the next note is its resolution. So be sure to hear how notes have different functions. It's just a page full of eighth notes, but every note will have a little different function depending on if it's part of a harmony or if it's not part of the harmony. If it's not part of the harmony, it has to resolve someplace. And also be aware of the voice leading. For example, this E flat, the first note of 43, it goes to the F. In fact, there's this little scale of bass notes. Well, it's a lot like when you're playing a Bach movement. You emphasize bass notes, you feel how they connect over a course of measures underneath the more active melody above. So hear the function of what's going on in the music. And here's a passage where actually I skip off the string with my bow compared to the beginning of the etude, where I stayed more on. Here, I do like to skip off just a little bit. And then what's coming up here, we have to be really mindful of our position work from 51. 3 on C, 4 on B flat, definitely a shift, you can't reach it. And be mindful of how far you're shifting. I mean, the interval between the notes is a minor 7th, C to B flat. But how far are we shifting? We have to be aware of that. 3 on C, on the G string, up a whole step. And that puts 4 on B flat. So be mindful of that shifting process. How far do you have to shift your hand? And now here, you have 2 on A flat, and you're going to 4 on G flat. It's not under your hand, at least not in normal position work. When 2 is on A flat, of course 4 is on F natural. We need G flat. This could be a shift. But you know what? Our 4th finger is flexible enough in this situation that you can treat it as an extension, an illegal extension. Think of it that way. It's an illegal extension that you can get away with. Exact same thing in the next 2 measures. Shift up a whole step. Illegal extension. You do that illegal extension and right away 4th finger comes back. So from 51. So that's the approach to take to those measures. Some challenging position work here. It's an easy one to think of though. You go 2, thumb, and then thumb shifts up to where 2 was. And then once you're in that position, you're just in a scale position, in thumb position. And stay here, you're going to go across strings. Back to half position. You know what? Where it says 4 on G natural in measure 61, I play third finger, because you can reach the next note with an extension. I prefer that. I think it's a little more efficient. And there's always this question in our Popper Etudes: should we follow the fingerings no matter what, just for the exercise value of Popper's fingerings in Popper Etudes, or can we make little adjustments to suit ourselves? And I think sometimes I say one answer, sometimes I say the other answer. In this case, I changed to third finger in measure 61. So each one of those measures from 62 to 66 has the same harmonies, just up a step every measure. Starting in 63, that's the number I meant to say. Oh, it's not exactly the same. This is just a major 6. They're actually, to be theoretically proper, it's a diminished 7, while others were minor 7s in the same spot in the measure. So be aware of how they aren't exactly the same. It sounds like the same figure, but the intervals are a little different, so let's be sure to get that. And then in measure 66, here's another place where I allow myself to use my own personal fingering instead of 2 open 4, which works perfectly well, by the way. You can use that if you like it. But I do 1, 4, 3. That way every measure starts the same. I started the previous measure 1, 4, 3. And so in measure 67, I also like 1, 4, 3. But the 2 open 4 is perfectly good. So from measure 63, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 3. Doesn't matter which fingering you do on the first half of the measure, that doesn't change the second half of the measure. 2, 4. And we have a harmonic to help us with this first big shift. For the second one, we don't have a harmonic to help us, but keep in mind our shifts always work better if we shift with our arm pulling our hand. Don't just try to quickly push your hand down for the shift, even though it has to be kind of a quick shift. The process makes it easier to be quick, and the process starts with arm. And do follow the Roman numerals. Once you shift up there, you stay in that position and you go across to the D string. Is marked perfectly clearly, so just follow those markings exactly. And then you jump back to the A string for measure 71. I'm playing some funny wrong note. Thumb on harmonic, and that's kind of your escape. Here you're not going to go across strings, you're going to go back the A string. And that harmonic thumb on A makes it easy to shift back to 3 on G sharp. Now a chain of diminished 7s. These are all the same harmony, just starting 1 inversion lower every measure. Here he changes the harmony, makes it a D flat dominant 7. And D flat is the dominant of G flat, our home key for the piece. Here we are at the recap. And the fork in the road is coming up. Right here. And there again, and as always, here the functions of the notes. And as at the bottom of the first page of this etude, where am I? I'm looking at measure 89. The second note of the measure is not part of the harmony, and it resolves to F sharp. E is not part of the harmony. It's just a D major chord. E resolves to D. B resolves to A sharp. And now I think Popper stays in G flat major all the way to the end. G flat chord with an added sixth, just for a little fun color. The E flat is the added sixth to the G flat major chord. So from measure 95, he's in that harmony all the way to the end. Now he's arrived at G flat. G flat chord with G flat in the bottom. Notice how the slurs make a little fun variety. I mean, the slur is always on the first note of the measure in measure 100, 101, and 102, the first pair of notes in the measure, but it feels different. Because first of all, 100 is a down bow. 101 is a copy, but starting on an up bow. And then here he slurs an extra note. I may have said the wrong direction for the bow. Let's see, from 95. Yeah, 100 starts up bow. 101 is down bow. And now you have a three-note slur. So that you can finish with that slur at the end, this nice ba-rump to finish the etude. Hey, that's Popper Etude number 30. Those are the things I think about when I practice this piece, and I hope it's helpful. Have fun.